Yeah, guys, Merc here. Merc Files, Book of Eli. Talkback, Merc Files here. Obviously, the website www.talkbackworld.net, where real fans roam. Get over there, get on the site. If you're a fan of movies, games, TV shows, whatever it may be, only for intelligent debates, obviously. Those in the know about the Talkback Senate and where it's at. Anyway, I sort of have hope already put up his review and thoughts on a Book of Eli, and I thought, look, basically I'm roaming the land again. I'm on a voyage, so once again I have to do Merc files from my outpost where I'm at the moment. But I basically, just caught this picture. This was one of my anticipated movies of 2010. It's come pretty early, obviously, within the first few weeks. And here are my thoughts. Basically, look, guys, this is a talk back, okay? This is Merc Files. Spoiler, humongous spoilers, okay? So if by any stretch that you have not seen this movie and you're on here, leave now immediately unless you do not care about spoilers, because I'm going to be discussing a lot of aspects of this movie. And if you don't want any spoilers, I advise you to leave now so you have been warned. Okay. Basically, my anticipation for this movie, like I've actually talked about this a lot on Talkback over the past few years. That Talkback has been kicking it on YouTube and radio and so forth. That I think there needed to be more diversity in the sci-fi fandom genre. Where you're talking about comic book heroes, fantasy, action, and all these sorts of things. I felt that diversity was important because I felt that based on the way where the world is at now, it will definitely give a more interesting tableau and landscape for fans to be drawn into all aspects of cinema. And obviously, there are now so many different perspectives on life that there is no longer this single status quo that we're used to having from Hollywood of the way heroes and villains are portrayed and so forth. I mean, I've already talked about the Avatar situation and said that, look, I liked that movie. I liked Avatar. I thought Avatar was good. It was good. It's not the greatest movie of all time. It's definitely not the best movie of the year, despite what the Golden Globes have said, which I don't know what they're thinking. It's obviously a marketing thing because it's made so much money, so it's everybody scratching each other's backs. But that being the case, I felt, look, this Avatar was so much more advanced than a lot of movies that have come out in that blockbuster vein, like Bayformers and Bayformers 2 and Merc Stagnation, Crap on Ball, and all these other movies that have come out. Book of Eli, I feel, differs from this because, like, I said about Avatar that it still had that thing of the whole, people have said, oh, talking about the whole African element is going too far. It's just a sci-fi movie. The fact is that is what it is. It is basically an allegory for white hero goes into African tribal situations, saves them, becomes the greatest of them of all time, blah, 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 blah. Fair enough. And like I said, it didn't actually really harm my appreciation of the movie. Now, when you look at Book of Eli, like the first thing that struck me when I saw the casting and I saw the subject matter involved, I was like, wow, Denzel Washington, a black actor, playing a role of savior, of mankind, essentially. That in itself is quite different. It's not something that's common. I think till Will Smith did it in Independence Day and then did the same thing again in I Am Legend. I think he's one of the few actors who have portrayed a role that usually you wouldn't find black or African American actors portray. So I thought it was very interesting. I'm like, you know what, man? The fact that it's like a mixed cast, you've got Gary Oldman in there, Denzel Washington, Mila Kunis, whatever, whatever. I said, this is something that I think, at least on that respect, it's unique. And the directors themselves are black. So I was like, you know what? This isn't your typical gangster shooty, shooty, shoot drugs movie, like Menace to Society or Dead Presidents or whatever. Even Dead Presidents that I always said was one of the more interesting Vietnam movies. Still, it was very interesting. Went into this picture, and off the bat, I'll say this overall. I think this movie was actually a good movie. It was good. It was flawed, severely flawed, and it was flawed for decisions that were made. I feel that overall, this movie was had potential because all the ingredients were there to make it a classic. All the ingredients. I mean, the cinematography on occasion was amazing. The music was absolutely excellent. I mean, this is actually one of the best movie soundtracks I've heard in a long time. It was so good that as soon as I got home, I went online to try and start finding tracks from the movie. Because honestly, I would say that that's probably one of the best aspects of this film was the soundtrack. Um, so overall, there were all these elements. I mean, the cinematography, the set design, the way that the way they actually managed to make you feel like the world had ended. The pictures, the images of all the deserted cars and broken down bridges and roads and everything. It looked really well realized. You know. So on that front, I'm like, okay, look, the world is there, everything is there, to make this modern classic. When I say classic, I'm talking about like a cult classic of the level of things like Blade Runner. And I'm not actually stretching here because people say, oh, Blade Runner is an absolute masterpiece. This movie could have been that. It's actually really could have because there was more in this that I could connect to than in Blade Runner. Because Blade Runner had a lot of human elements and a lot of things to think about, but I think this actually had a lot more. You know, the idea that this guy is carrying the Bible and it's the last Bible, and all the connotations that are associated with the idea that the Bible is a very powerful weapon or tool, depending on whose hands it might be in. And based on the history that we know of the Bible and the way it's been used over history, it literally has started wars, killed millions, if not billions of people, while at the same time saved millions, if not billions of people. So that idea in itself is a very realistic threat that Eli is actually carrying. And I thought that in itself, I'm like, man, that's a story right there. Like if you fully flesh that out and go into the nitty gritty of what the Bible entails, what this journey entails, and especially what the kinds of things that Gary Oldman's character Carnegie would be using this Bible for, I think that in itself would have elevated the movie a couple of notches, you know. Um, so that being said, I feel that probably the weakest element of Book of Eli was actually the script, not the story idea, because I feel the story idea was very interesting, but I think the execution of the scripts, what was actually put on the script page to be shot, was the problem. That there just wasn't. It deviated too much into trying to give you cool elements, action elements, and so forth, which were fine. Listen, I can take the action. The action was good, but it deviated so much into trying to water down so many of the ideas that it couldn't fully realize the gravitas of what was actually being put on the table. Because let's face it, I mean, a lot of people would probably switch off because it is. I mean, in my view, this is a religious movie. To all intents and purposes, a lot of people will switch off. But I would say this, that so few movies these days are made so unashamedly religious, like so unashamedly Christian, that it is actually refreshing to actually see a movie like this out there. Because I'm Christian. I'm like, look, I'm not like a guy who's going to run around the streets talking about God, this and that, and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's like these ideas in Book of Eli are things that I think about, and a lot of other Christians might actually think about as well, as far as faith, what you believe in and what you don't believe in, whether you still have faith anymore, your adversity, how hard it is for you to get done what you want to get done, whether you're ever going to achieve your dreams or your goals, whatever. These are things that major movies have stamped out. These things used to exist like 40 years ago in movies all the time. But because society has become so, I don't know if you want to call it secular, it's become so void of spirituality, the Western world anyway. You put anything like this out there, people automatically attack it. Like the kind of attacks I've seen against Book of Eli, I feel are fueled to a great degree by the fact that it is so overtly Christian, for want of a better word. So much so that people on the side of the movie have tried to pretend or act like the movie